And first review for the week is going to be Cashing In, Lex Voice Book number 2, written by Daniel Scheenhoven. It is 459 pages, $4.99. It's available on Kindle Unlimited. And here's the author's description. Doc Holyday never expected to be in a new world with a new name, but Lady Luck made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Her deal came with perks. He gained the ability to heal, and he could periodically avoid taking damage from any single attack. Lady Luck has assured him that the list of perks would grow over time. The offer also came with a major drawback, however. Doc had to help save the world. While that would be a tall order for anybody, Doc was never one to back down from a challenge. Luckily, pun intended, Doc struck it rich on a mining operation, sticking a claim worth more than the whole town of Deep Gulch. Using his new wealth, Doc hired the local clan outdoors to work the claim. He offered them not only better wage, but respect as well. Similarly, he was able to hire the secretary away from what had been the wealthiest men in town, and freed several other town's merchants from the crippling debt they'd been saddled with. All of this has made him a target for the bigwigs who run the town. Doc isn't worried, though, because he has friends to help him along. But will they be able enough to handle Goodman and Suez and the Church of Apoc, which is bound to notice him? Okay, there's also a disclaimer saying that the book contains adult situations, including but not limited to sex, gambling, abuse, drug use, harem, and murder, including graphic sex scenes portraying elements of BDSM. You've been warned, and that's a kind of common disclaimer for most of the Daniel Scheenhoven stuff. And yet, people still complain that they weren't warned, whether it's for some reason, because they didn't read the novel description or the reviews who say that it isn't there. Full disclosure, I received a copy for review. I purchased a copy when it became available. And again, forewarning, there are graphic sex scenes in the story. It's not a major part of it, percentage-wise, but there are scenes of people, enjoying each other in a very story-appropriate way, in that their intimacy on a physical level matches the great intimacy on a story and developmental and character level. And plus, the author just enjoys writing it, and fans like reading it for other fans. And I'll get to that. I don't know. I skip. They're very skippable for me. But they're also very much noted. This is, triggered this is the start of the sex scene. You can skip to the next little note. This is a slice of life entry into the series. The novel advances the romance and relationships between the main characters and some ladies. And that's kind of the big thing here. There's a lot of cultural development, there's a lot of background and world building stuff happening, and a lot of relationship development, not just between the main character and his partners, but also between him and the various non-human factions in this, Wild West kind of world, whether it's the dwarves or the beastkin or whatever other factions there are. There's a lot of that world building development. However, what there isn't a lot of is actual advancement in the conflict. The novel description mentions a couple situations that are set up that are poised to increase the tension level in the story, increase the antagonism between him and the other factions that are aggressive and antagonistic. But there's very little, I should say, relatively little advancement of that actual conflict of it coming to a head. There's one particular instance, there's a couple smaller instances, but there's one particular instance towards the end of the story, and that's kind of it. And for all the buildup that was happening in the story, I was just kind of expecting personally a little more development on that side. I seriously expected the Church of Apoc to try to rein their heck on the main character and his new temple that he establishes, which isn't a spoiler. It happens. It's talking about book number 1, and also mentioned in the novel description. But that didn't happen. I absolutely recognize that this is a slice of life story, and that things unfolded at their own pacing, and this is already a 459-page book, and if the author had added all those conflict resolutions, this would be 1,000 pages, which is an entirely another book, and that's probably what's going to end up happening, and that some of those conflicts, I should say, should be popping up more in the next book, and which turns this novel into a lot of setup stuff, which may or may not be satisfying for some readers. Me personally, I thought it was good enough, I should say, that as far as the conflicts go, the world building, the character development, the relationship development, perfectly nice, really well done. And it was fun to see some of the jokes get their comeuppance in smaller ways. And it's on the power side of things, the game mechanic stuff, still developed. It's still there. It's definitely on the lighter side. The main character does advance his power system in getting new powers and using his faith points to get new awards. So there is still some of that, but again, it's on the lighter side. Overall, though, still a good read, especially for people who just like the casual reading of this world and just likes the characters and like the development of those relationships and those abilities and those things in here. This is definitely a relationship building entry into the series. And in the next book, hopefully we'll get some, bigger fights and some, more conflict, heading. But for me, still gets a good score, 7.3 out of 10. That's cashing in Lux Always Book number 2 with a score of 7.3 out of 10.